Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. And the most important updates are coming from the western part of Ukraine, I believe so. The Russians made massive missile attack all over the territory of Ukraine, and the Ukrainian sources published a lot of video confirmations of flying missiles above the territory of Ukraine. Most of the missiles were heading in direction of Dnipro region, in Odessa region, and Lvov region, and Khmelnytsky region. And if you remember a few days ago, not just a few days ago, but the previous weeks and the end of the previous week, the Ukrainians were bombing and shelling and attacking Crimea, and at least we calculated at least 3 ammo depots that were destroyed as a result of Ukrainian attacks. And basically those attacks were implemented using the Storm Shadow missiles, and we know that the only possible solution that Ukrainians have is to use Su-24 aircrafts as a carriers for that type of missile. And as I know, the airfield that where the Ukrainians keep their Su-24 airfields is located in the vicinity of small settlement by the name of Starokonstantinov that located in Khmelnytsky area. And there is a 7th Aviation Brigade that has this type of Su-24 on board. And the Russians, according to the sources we have, the Russians attacked this area using the Kinzhal missiles as well. Furthermore, there was strikes with Kinzhal and in Khmelnytsky area, and there are not just the Air Forces airfield of that with this type of aircraft. There is also a lot of bases of, for example, 19th Tank Missile Brigade, a lot of 48th, for example, Engineering Brigade, and many other military bases. We got a lot of updates, and there was not just one wave of attack. The Russians sent few waves of attacks, and the Russians were using 15 or 20 missiles during this or that wave. So, for example, according to some raw calculations, the Russians launched around 80 missiles in the direction of Ukraine, and most of them, of course, got the target. I believe that the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation today will provide us more details about that attack, but that was a very terrible day in the western part of Ukraine, obviously. Furthermore, a lot of missiles were launched in direction of Odessa, and this is also a very important region because the Ukrainians are trying to establish and create another possibility of grain deal their own way, using the ports that located in Reni in the south of Odessa, which the Russians were bombing during the previous days. Furthermore, the Russians made another aircraft attack bombing of Snake Island using Su-34 with the FAB missiles, FAB 500 bombs, and there was a very heavy explosions. Of course, this island is not so big, but the main purpose of this island is that Ukrainians have possibilities to establish some equipment on this island that can control and to track the Russian fleet in the Black Sea. So probably that was some kind of test attack from the Russian side, because maybe they had some intelligence information, but just to be sure and just to stay on the safe side, the Russian bombed that island, and as I understand, the Ukrainians lost their equipment that they were using against the Russian fleet. Furthermore, there were very powerful missile attacks in the vicinity of Dnipro. After a few days of failed attempt to attack in the direction of Rabotina, of course, the Ukrainians had a lot of losses, had a lot of wounded soldiers and so on, and the closest nearest settlement that Ukrainians were able to use is, of course, Zaporozhye and Dnipro. And as a service center, as a hospital for wounded soldiers. So I understand the Russians managed to track and discover the Ukrainians' roads, and after a few days of clashes, they start bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions in Dnipro as well. So as we can see, the previous the previous night was probably the toughest, the hardest night in the story of special military operation. Now we are moving to the Zaporozhye area. Today we got more updates, more videos from the clashes that took place during the previous days. Now, to tell the truth, the Ukrainians are not going to stop, and today The sources reported that at 6 a.m. the Ukrainians launched another wave of attack in direction of Robotyne. So the previous 2 days the Ukrainians lost more than 50 armored vehicles, including different tanks and armored vehicles, personal armored carriers. And today, the third day in a row, the Ukrainians launched another attack. And today we are going to receive more video and photo confirmations of another portion of Ukrainian losses. But as we discussed yesterday, according to geolocated videos, I have already updated this map. Most of the mappers, after the military summary, confirmed the information, the piece of information that Ukrainians managed to develop their bridgehead to the south and to capture the defense belt that we discussed yesterday. And I'm talking about this defense belt. As I understand, the Ukrainians today will try to improve their positions exactly in this direction. They will try to go further to the south. Of course, the main idea of attacking to the south to establish fire control over the supply road between Novopokrovka and Robotyne. The Russians, I'm not sure they will risk to start supporting of this settlement on the west of this settlement, because these fields are mined, or there are not so many roads that the Russians can use for the same purposes. So that's why the Russians need to secure and need to protect the southeastern flank of this area. And of course, the Ukrainians will try to to continue development of their bridgehead to the east in direction of Verbova. So this is the purpose of the Ukrainians, another wave of attack of today. And let's just take a look at more videos we got for the previous days. The Russians published a lot of videos how they're using FPV drones. We're attacking the Ukrainians' armored vehicles and Ukrainians' different types of tanks, Bradleys, and so on. This video we see how the Russians destroyed probably just a regular Ukrainian track that where Ukrainians were using for redeployment of the infantry. We got another video confirmation from the bridgehead that the Ukrainians managed to capture. On this video we see another destroyed personal carrier of the Ukrainians. Another one was trying to evacuate. I believe that the main purpose of Ukrainian tactics is to get on the armor as close as possible to the combat line, the infantry. Then they need to land them, and after that to retreat. And this is like ongoing process, and a single personal carrier probably need to make few waves of such operations before the end of this or that attack or this or that attempt to attack. Furthermore, we got more updates and more videos from the edge of Robotyne. As we discussed yesterday, some sources reported that Ukrainians made an attempt to attack the Robotyne itself, but those attacks were repelled, and the Ukrainians probably realized that highly unlikely they are able to enter Robotyne itself from the east, from the north, and the only possible solution they have is to continue advancing to the south, trying to cut the supply road between Novopokrovka and Robotyne. This is the only solution for the Ukrainians. They understand this, and currently and today they will try to implement this tactic as well. We got more videos from these fields. This probably, as you can see on this field, you will see that this is like it's basically looks like a moon, not like an earth, because of a lot of lots of signs of attack of artillery and so on. A lot of armored vehicles were destroyed. Some armored vehicles Ukrainians were trying to evacuate, but we see that that was just a waste of time. The Russians continue using the Lancet drones. This is the perfect weapon, as we can see. Hundreds, probably dozens of videos we received from this bridgehead. On this video we see another destroyed T-64, probably somewhere in the vicinity of Robotyne. A very interesting video we got a little bit to the north. The Ukrainians made another attempt to attack Russian positions a little bit from the northeast area, and they were using personal carriers. Probably this is old Soviet models, and they were attacking the Russian positions from the north. At some point of that attack, the Russians managed to discover Ukrainian forces and to attack them with the drone, or not with the drone, but with Lancet. An armored vehicle was destroyed somewhere between the forest lines, and a group of Ukrainian forces who was moving behind that armored vehicles was trying to bypass the same area, and we see that at some certain point time they got this area where that armored vehicle was destroyed, and basically they were blocked. They stuck in this forest line, and probably the Russians also managed to track them, to discover, maybe later also deal some damage and to destroy them, because it was very not difficult, was very dangerous to stay at the same position for a very long time. Now let's move to the Vremivka tactical bridgehead. As you can see, we have updated the map in Staromayorsk. The Ukrainians continue pushing and advancing, and currently the Ukrainians are trying to complete the clearing operation in Staromayorsk itself. Yet the Russians were able to repel the Ukrainian storm operation in the southern part of the settlement, but the situation is very difficult. And the Russian sources reported that the situation is very difficult and probably is critical for the Russians. And there are very high chances that the Russians will be forced to step back, not just from Staromayorsk, but from Urozhaina as well. The Ukrainians are sending more and more waves of their forces, not counting their losses and so on. So, as I understand, within the next 48 hours, according to the Russian sources, there are very high chances that the Russians will be able to enter Urozhaina from the north and probably capture the half of this settlement, and the Ukrainians will be able to complete the clearing operation of Staromayorsk. The Russians published more videos from the western flank of the Vremivka tactical bridgehead. On this area, on the western flank, the Ukrainians launched another offensive operation as well, the same as in the central part. But in this area, they wasn't so successful, and the Russians published the video how they destroyed another convoy of Ukrainian forces who was heading to attack the Russian settlement forces in Priutina. Now we're moving further to Donetsk, and the clashes in the vicinity of Nivoysk has been activated one more time. The Ukrainians were sending more and more forces. Probably those were the positions of Ukrainian tanks. A few weeks ago, maybe a week ago, we have already discussed this area. The Ukrainians during the previous week managed to return control over this forest line. The Russians managed to discover Ukrainian positions, as you can see. And as a result of artillery strike, the Russians destroyed Ukrainian T-64 tank and probably a personal armored carrier or Bradley. And that allowed the Russians to return lost positions that they lost during the previous week of clashes. There are no updates from Avdiivka bridgehead. Both sides, either the Russians and the Ukrainians, continue regrouping before another wave of counter each other attacks in this area. So let's wait. I believe that also in a few days we're going to see the restart of more clashes in this area. Now let's move to Klishchiivka. The Russians managed to save control over the central and the northeastern part of that settlement. Some sources are saying that the Russians also managed to force the Ukrainians to step back from the southwestern part, but for now we haven't received any video confirmations. The Russian sources published the geolocated picture of pontoon bridges that Ukrainians are using for transferring troopers on this side of the channel. Yet the Russians haven't destroyed those pontoon bridges, and this is the question that most of the military experts on the Russian side have: why the Russians haven't yet destroyed those pontoon bridges. Also, the Russians continue suppressing operation on the northern flank. If you remember, the Russians managed to break the entire situation on the north in the vicinity of Berkhovka water reservoir and to get the situation in their favor. On this video, we see how the Russians Lancet managed to destroy another Ukrainian T-64 tank that was located in the vicinity of Bogdanovka. And on the northern flank, in the vicinity of Grigorievka, the Russians published the video how they was attacking and bombing the Ukrainian positions in the vicinity of that settlement, trying to pin down and to freeze the Ukrainian forces in this area. From the other side, we see some kind of activation of Ukrainian forces, Ukrainian activity in the vicinity of Zelezhnyanskaya. Probably as soon as the Ukrainians are able to fix the situation with Klishchiivka to capture the settlement, if they of course are able to do this, they will change their focus to the northern flank and they will try to attack in direction of Zelezhnyanskaya to capture this forest, this important defense belt. Today the Ukrainians published another video how they were bombing and shelling the Russian positions between this area, in the forest and along the forest line. And this is not the first video. Probably during the previous week, this is the fourth or fifth video in a row from this bridgehead, and mainly from the Ukrainian side, how the Ukrainians were trying to attack, to bomb, even sometimes to storm the Russian positions in this area. So as I understand, this area is going to be the second direction of Ukrainian attack after they will solve the Klishchiivka question, let's call it like this. When talking about Svatovo area, Svatovo, Kupiansk, Liman front lines. We haven't received any video confirmation, video updates from this bridgehead. We got a lot of updates from the Ministry of Defense, from different sources that the Russians managed to develop the bridgehead. But as I understand, the Ukrainians also managed to redeploy some reserves, some reinforcement. But as most of the military experts are saying that these reserves that Ukrainians managed to redeploy in the Svatovo direction are not enough to stop the Russians. And I believe, and according to the military experts, most of the military experts, the Russians will have a small operational pause before regrouping, getting more reinforcements, and maybe even today or tomorrow in the morning the Russians will restart their offensive operation and will continue advancing to the west in the direction of Oskol River. And that's it for this video. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.